Shadows of Brimstone is a game that was sort of released at Gen Con 2014. There were copies for the backers of the Kickstarter campaign to pick up, and then there was a limited amount of copies available for purchase, and I did purchase one. Shadows of Brimstone is a game that comes with two core sets. You can get either, then that's a perfectly self-standing game, or you can purchase them together and use them one as the expansion of the other. You can combine them together. There are two sets, one is City of the Ancients and the other one is Swamps of Depth. This is a game set in the American Old West, but not the one that you know, an American Old West plagued with horrors, monsters, and terrifying creatures inspired by the mythology of H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhian horror, and banditos, gunslingers fighting together. How can it get better than that? I mean, you have two wonderful thematic worlds that are blended in wow, something that is very promising thematically speaking. Flying Frog is famous for these big boxes full of stuff for adventure games that are highly thematic. The theme is promising. Flying Frog has a good record of being able to handle theme well and to create engaging narratives around that theme. So I was definitely curious about this game. I picked it up, played it, and played it, and played it, and played it again. I've been playing this game a lot in the last couple of days, and I'm happy I did. This is a game that I can already anticipate as extraordinary, not just good, as wow, mind-blowing, exciting, phenomenal game. Let me show you the game, let me tell a little bit about it, and then I'll keep singing praises for this game in the conclusions of this video. Players in this game control characters such as the bandito, the saloon girl, or the gunslinger, archetypes of Western fiction and culture. Characters have a main card representing the stats and the abilities of the character. For example, all characters have agility, cunning, spirit, strength, lore, and luck. These numbers here indicate the number of dice that the character rolls so when taking a test in one of these categories. Initiative indicates the order in which characters activate during a turn. Combat is the number of dice that the character rolls in melee. And this is the number that the character needs to match or exceed in order to score a hit in melee. The character has a value also for range attacks, and that is the number that the character needs to match or exceed to score a hit when using range combat. And the number of dice that the character rolls in combat depends on the number of shots of the weapon that the character is using. With this gun, one die is rolled. A regular pistol allows 2 shots, that is, to roll 2 dice. Grit. Grit is a very important resource the characters spend and recover throughout the game. Grit indicates the determination of the hero and can be used to purchase extra movement or to purchase rerolls on the dice. However, you can reroll only once. A certain die roll can be rerolled only once, no matter how much grit you have and how much you would like to spend. 1 grit per reroll, 1 reroll per roll. Health, when it goes down to 0, the hero is KO'd. 3+, in this case for the saloon girl, is the defense. Whenever the hero receives a hit, a physical hit, the hero can roll to defend it, to see if the hero is able to annul that hit before it applies against the health of the hero. Similarly, sanity indicates, well, let's say is the physical health, this is the mental health of the character. It goes down to 0, the hero is KO'd too, and each hero has a value indicating the mental defense of the hero. When the hero takes a horror hit, then the hero can roll against his or her ability to defend to see if the hit can be annulled before it applies. Heroes also have abilities. For example, the Saloon Girl has the Comforting Presence ability. She allows adjacent characters during the game to recover sanity or health that was lost. She has a limitation in that she can only use guns that have the light keyword, such as the holdout pistol, which is indeed a light pistol, and she's very fast. She has +1 movement. Each character also has starting items indicated here on the card, such as this one for the Saloon Girl. Each character also has a set of cards with special abilities to choose from, so not all Saloon Girls, not all Bandidos, not all Gunslingers, not all US Marshals will be the same, because you can customize them by adding one of the available ability cards. In this case, for the Saloon Girl, I chosen the Dirty Fighting card that gives all of the Saloon Girls attacks +1 damage. Each character starts with a personal item. There is a deck of cards that you draw the initial personal item from. So in these things you already have customizations that allow you to make your character more unique. Each character has a side bag, which will allow the character to carry up to 5 tokens, and tokens indicate small items such as bandages, dynamite sticks, or whiskey, which can be used during the game to receive certain types of advantages. A very important element in the game is the depth track. At the beginning of the game, the players place the party marker on this side of the depth track on the main entrance, and they also place this marker here, the marker that represents darkness as in evil. We all know that evil is green. They place that marker on the darkness start side of the track. At the beginning of each and every turn, the players roll 2 dice. There is a single roll for the entire group, and they check the result against the number at the bottom of the depth track in the section in which the party marker is. If the roll matches or exceeds that number, like in this case, 8 higher than 7, nothing happens. Hooray, that is good. If the number is lower than the number at the bottom of the section where the party marker is, you move the darkness / evil marker up by 1 on the track. As the players explore the mine, each time that they enter a new tile, they go deeper in the mine, and you move this marker by 1 on this track. Now, the party marker can go in spaces that have these special symbols, like the stains of blood or the growing dread indication, and nothing happens. Nothing happens, it has no effect. But there definitely is an effect when the darkness evil marker enters these special spaces. When this marker enters a space with the stain of blood symbol, then you draw a darkness card and you resolve the effects. This is, as you can imagine, bad stuff. The idea is that as the players go down in the mine, they are upsetting dark, mysterious energies. They're waking stuff up that should not be awake. And negative effects apply because of the level of darkness that enters our world. If the marker, or I should say when the marker enters a growing dread space, the players draw a card from the growing dread deck, but they do not flip it immediately. It is not resolved immediately as it happens with the darkness cards. The card is placed face down by the depth track. And there are other effects that may add growing dread cards to this stack. So you form a stack which is placed face down, and that's the idea. These are negative effects, but you do not know what they are yet. You just know that they're piling up there. Hence the growing dread that you feel as you see this stack of negative effects getting bigger and bigger. When the scenario instructs you to, you flip the entire deck and you start resolving the growing dread cards one by one. I'm not going to show them to you, so you do not have a spoiler as to the bad stuff that may happen to you. Trust me, it can give you quite a hit. It can be quite problematic to face the effects of the growing dread. Usually the growing dread deck is flip face up and resolved towards the end of the scenario when the final fight of the scenario starts. So this marker goes down as the players go deeper and deeper in the mine, it gets harder and harder to hold back the darkness, and if the darkness reaches the mine entrance, then the darkness has escaped the mine, and this is bad. This is one of the conditions that will make the players lose the game. The players lose the game if they allow the darkness to escape the mine, and they also lose the game if all their heroes are KO'd at the same time. After you attempt to hold back the darkness, characters activate one by one. They all start from the entrance of the mine, and characters that activate roll to see the number of movement points that they receive. You roll 1d6. In this case, for example, the character I'm activating, say the Gunslinger, receives 2 movement points, 1, 2. That's simple. If you roll a 1, well, then you're not gonna move much, but as a reward prize, you receive a grit point. You receive a grit point when you roll a 1. However, some players, including me, don't like to have to roll for movement every turn, and in that case there's an optional rule, which I always use, which gives each character 4 movement points each turn. If you use that rule, you still roll a die when you activate your character, but that is not roll for movement anymore, it is simply roll for grit. So if you roll a 1, you receive a grit, otherwise you don't. You still also keep that number because during the turn there may be effects that are based on the movement that you rolled, in which case you use that number instead of your standard 4. But with this rule, you do move by 4 each turn. After you have moved, you can attempt to scavenge an area that has not been scavenged yet. To scavenge an area, you roll 3 dice, 3d6, and you need to roll a 6 to be successful. If you roll at least a 6 with one of your dice, then you have successfully scavenged the area. You pick up the scavenge deck, you draw a card, and you resolve the effects. Some effects are negative, ouchie, some are like emerging darkness. Gee, this is not a great scavenging. Some are useful, and some are perfectly useless. Nothing. Well, you get movement, you get experience points, but not much else. The scavenge deck has no discard pile. You then shuffle the scavenge card back into the deck, so you may have a game in which nothing is ever found, or a lot of bad stuff happens, a lot of good stuff happens. You cannot count cards. The same apply when you get loot, and also the loot cards are then shuffled back in the deck every time that they're drawn from that deck. A certain tile can be scavenged only once. If you have scavenged successfully a tile, you then place a scavenge marker there to indicate that the tile cannot be scavenged anymore. If you end your turn on the puzzle connection of the tile in which you are, you can look through that connection, looking for more tiles, seeing what's next. Then you draw a card from the map deck, and that tells you the tile that you receive. That you have found. There are many tiles in the game. You simply pick the corresponding one from the box, and you look at the arrow, which indicates the side of the tile you're coming from. In this case, for example, our characters are coming from there. That means they're coming from there. That means you attach the tile there. The squares which are in the connection between the two tiles count as being on both tiles for game effects. This is very important for a lot of things. And now you can explore the new tile. However, when you place a new tile, you also draw an exploration marker and you place it face down on the tile. After players have finished activating, so moving the characters, scavenging, or looking through connections, you flip the exploration marker face up. This is the exploration phase. Two things happen. One, you see what happens. It can be an encounter, an attack, an ambush, several things may happen, so you will have to resolve that effect. For example, in an encounter, you draw an encounter card, which you resolve. Sometimes the effect just applies mechanically. Sometimes, after you read the flavor text, you have to make decisions. These cards are sort of like mini trees, mini narrative trees in which you have to make decisions, roll dice, and apply the effects. A lot of fun stuff may happen. By fun I mean horrendous, terrifying, scary, horrific, and, you know, fun. Another thing that you find in the exploration token is an icon, one or multiple icons indicating gates. That tells you, well, not gates, exits. That tells you how many exits the tile in which you are has. For example, this encounter token tells me that this tile here has one exit, so one entrance and then also one exit, only one. So I roll a die, I rolled a 4, and that tells me that the exit is this one here. That means that this side here, this puzzle connection in this game is not an exit, so I place a cap here and I block it. This is excellent. That means that the same tile actually will have different combinations of exits each game. This adds the variety of the dungeon that is created, because the next game maybe I'll draw that tile with something that has 2 exits and then both connections will be open. Not in this case. Some encounters also will show you a gate to a strange world, and in that case you add a gate to the board, and that gate allows you, if you travel through it, to travel to another plane of reality, another side of reality, the Targa Plateau. The Targa Plateau has its own encounter deck, has its own specific rules, has its own map deck. They're not physically connected, but you jump from one to the other as if they were. They count as adjacent to one another. And when you are in the Targa Plateau, you draw locations from this other deck here. As you can see, the locations look a little different at first sight, but basically you're using the same tiles that you use for the mine. You simply look at the other side. Each tile has a mine side and a plateau side, and suppose I draw that card. Now, as I'm exploring the Targa Plateau, I am in this other area here. So, pretty simple, as you can see. You move, you look through connections, you scavenge, then you resolve the exploration. Sometimes you have to make decisions, sometimes you're simply attacked. This is for, let's say, a standard turn. If there are monsters on the board, then you're attacked, and then certain options are not open anymore. You can't just go around scavenging and looking for loot happily, as there are these scary, horrendous monsters that are attacking you. When there is an attack, you draw a card from a threat deck to see what kind of monster you received. The number and level of your character indicates the type of threat deck that you use. There is a low, medium, high threat. Of course, the higher the level of threat, the more monsters you will have. Some monsters will have special rules, special things that will make them particularly nasty. During a turn where there are monsters on the board, you activate characters normally. So at the beginning of the turn, you still roll to hold back darkness, you still activate your characters in order of initiative. Problem is that during a turn where there are monsters on the board, I call them the fight turns, even though there's not exactly a fight turn per se. During a turn where a fight needs to be resolved, you also activate monsters. And the monsters have a card which you look at to find their stats. Now, players and monsters move, and they have movement, and then they have attack. A hero that attacks can move, and then can use an attack. It can be ranged or melee. If you're performing a range attack, you need to have a line of sight to be within range. You roll the number of dice indicated by your combat or by the shots of the weapon that you're using to fire. You roll that amount of dice. Each number that is equal to or higher than your range value is a hit. You apply the hit to the enemy. For each hit, you roll a die to see the amount of damage that you do. Suppose the gunslinger has inflicted a hit against that monster. And 3 is the number of damage points inflicted on that enemy. However, some enemies have defense. For example, this one has a defense of 3. You subtract that from each damage die. So actually 3 minus 3 is 0. That hit is completely absorbed by the defense of the opponent. However, when you're rolling for damage, if you roll a 6, you have rolled a critical hit. That means that when you're rolling damage, so if you roll a 6 on the die to hit, and that inflicts a hit, then the damage that you roll doesn't take defense into account. So if I rolled a 6, that was to hit, 3 to inflict damage. Now that 3 applies against the health of the target without regard for the defense. It just goes through. Hits are indicated by wound tokens that you place by the monster. A monster that goes down to 0 health is dead. The enemies attack in a similar way. They also roll a number of dice equal to their combat value. They hit each time that they match or exceed their melee value, or if they have range attacks, the range attacks. But instead of having a standard defense, like the monsters have, indicated here in the shield, the players have save rolls. That is, for each hit that was inflicted, they roll a die against the defense value or the willpower value, depending if that's a wound or a horror hit. Each time that they roll equal to or higher than defense, they annul a hit. Suppose that this monster has inflicted 3 hits against our gunslinger. The gunslinger rolled 3 dice against his health. 2 of the results were 5 or more, so the 3 hits, 2 are annulled, 2 are saved, 1 hit remains. For each hit, the player takes the amount of damage indicated here. So a single hit gives 4 points of damage to a character, 2 hits, 8 damage, 3 hits, 12 damage. As you can see, it can be pretty brutal. A hero that is KO'd is removed from the board. A marker is placed there to indicate that that hero is out of the game for now. But if the heroes are not all KO'd at the same time, if they manage to win the fight, then the heroes that were KO'd come to, but they will still have to roll on a table. It's not just like, oh, we're back, like as if nothing happened. There are long-term effects that happen if you were KO'd because your sanity went down to 0. Then you may be kinda sorta crazy, not completely non-functional, but sorta crazy. And if you were KO'd because your health went down to 0, then you're back on your feet, but maybe not ready to run a marathon. There are long-term effects that may apply. Physical damage that your character will have to suffer, will have to stand for a while, until, for example, the character travels to town and gets some medical help. When the game is over, if the characters are still alive, they can go to town, they travel to town. First you roll on a table to see if something happens as you're traveling to the closest town to the mine. Then players are allowed to visit locations in this town here. There's a little map. As you can see, there's the frontier outpost, the church, general store, docks office, blacksmith. They can then go to the saloon, they can sleep in the hotel, they can sleep in the campsite. When they're visiting these locations, and each character can visit one per, you refer to a specific card. You roll 2 dice to see if there are events that happen in that location. And after you resolve the event, which may be nothing or maybe other stuff, then you can choose to do things in that location. You can receive surgery. You can treat corruption. As you're around there, dark energies may corrupt your body. You can start to mutate. You wake up with 3 arms and a couple of tentacles. You may want to treat your corruption before you're too weird, before you're just a mass of goo and tentacles. You can purchase items. And this, for example, you can get injections. This is what you can do at the doctor. But in other locations you can do different things. It's not just about buying stuff. For example, if you go to the saloon, that's one of my favorite ones. If you go to the saloon, yes, events may happen, and then you can gamble. You can spend money to pretty much lose your money. Well, the idea is that you may be able to get more money, but usually when you gamble, it's not a great idea. You can purchase some items, and the saloon girl, the character, has a range of options that are open to her only. She may make money by entertaining customers, by pickpocketing the drunks in the saloon. She may purchase stuff that the players may not be able to purchase. If you go to the blacksmith, again, you resolve events. You can purchase items. For example, you can purchase upgraded forms of transport. You can purchase weapons. And what is really good, you can upgrade your things. One of the things that you will find down in the dungeon are these mysterious dark stones that are catalysts of dark energies. So when you go to the store, you may not only buy stuff, but also you may upgrade things. That is, you pay money, you bring the dark stones to the blacksmith, and the blacksmith will modify your item by adding things. For example, you may have a darkstone barrel for a gun, and the gun now has a longer range. You may add Darkstone horseshoes to your horse, Rune of Protection, Rune of Fortitude, Darkstone inlay, and now after you do that, you have upgraded a weapon with the Darkstone inlay. Now once per attack with this weapon, you may reroll a single to hit roll. Many things, and also you have the traditional go to the village, go to a location to buy stuff. But I like to find that actually in a lot of cases there are more things that may happen. That brings a lot of thematic variety, a lot of flavor. But these towns are not vacation locations. Bad stuff tends to happen. You have to choose if you want to sleep in a hotel, which costs money. You may choose to sleep in the campsite outside of town, then you need to roll to see what happens. Also, there may be town events. The longer you stay in town, the more likely it is that a town event will happen, and these town events are usually things that you don't want to face. So you're trying to go to town, get your business done as soon as possible, leave town. Also, there are connections between the town and the mine. If you lost the game because the darkness escaped the mine, but your characters are alive, then you lost the game, but you may still go to town, heal, buy stuff, but the darkness may have devastated the town, in which case not all locations may be available. Other effects may close down the locations, may make them unusable. Just the town itself is a micro world, which is a little calmer than the mine, not necessarily all that much, but a lot of narrative, a lot of situations happen. It's fun to go to the town, it's a different pace, but it's still a story that happens. It is not, here's the game and then we are just upgrading our characters. There's a story that happens here, and there's a different story that happens in town. The combination of the two gives this game an incredibly strong narrative feel. I find this to be the best adventure game that I've ever played. It's that simple. As it comes to games, the fantasy, horror theme games that tell you a story, I just can't think of another one that handles things so well, that creates such an intense story, such a strong thematic feel, such a thematic richness. This is really more than a game where you control a character and you move the character on the board, the character moves, you flip a card to see what happens, roll a die to resolve an attack. The mechanics are those, and those are shared by many games, for example by the D&D board games, but this handles these mechanics in an amazing way, and the result is really the fact that you feel like you are inhabiting a parallel world. Your character is really more than a sum of stats. It is a real character that you can connect with, that you can develop through time, you can develop through scenarios that are linked in a campaign. The characters level up, and when they level up they acquire new abilities, and each class has a branching tree of abilities. You need to have some to unlock some other abilities. If you unlock some, you will not be able to unlock other ones. So the characters do develop in different ways depending on the player and what the player wants to do with the character. The characters grow and become deeper and more realistic and more vivid as the story progresses. And I have to tell you, evidence of how immersive this game is in the fact that I've played other games in which the characters level up and do things like that, but I haven't been this excited about seeing a character grow from game to game as I've been about this one. I really, when I wasn't playing the game, and I played the game a lot in the last couple of days, I was thinking about the characters and what will happen to them next and what they can do next. I was excited about the idea that they would have another adventure, which is slightly different from just me being excited about playing the next game, which I was, but that was only part of the experience. There was that extra thematic thing. The game feels like an RPG. That's how immersive it is. At the same time, it is much more accessible than many RPGs. There are RPGs in which you need to read quite a thick book in order to get a sense of what the world is like and what happens in that world. Here the core of rules is pretty basic, and the theme, you don't have to study about it beforehand to see it. It comes from the cards, it comes from the components of the game, it comes from the map. you start playing the game and the theme emerges, you learn about this world, you become more and more familiar about the things that may happen, that tend to happen, that are less or more likely to happen. You get to explore this world, and you don't just explore the mind, you get a sense really that you are well, it feels like an open world video game with a lot of advantages compared to open world video games. The image never freezes. The acting of the character is much more realistic. There is more variety. Why? Because instead of being a video game in which you're looking at things on a screen, and those things may or may not look like the way you think they should look, here the stories happen in your mind, in your head, and that is why it always plays out and it looks the way you think it should. The characters move and talk and behave the way you think they should, and there's just a variety of narrative situations that come from the components that you will naturally add that will make the experience much more intense. I just find this more intense, more immersive than many video games, which also is one of the reasons why I do play video games, but I do prefer board games. It's more than a game, it is really a world. I think the Flying Frog really achieved something here. They really managed to create a parallel world, one that I definitely want to experience more. I'm going to play this game in the future. My only regret is not picking up both starting sets, both core sets at Gen Con. I wanted to try one and I thought, well, it probably is going to be good. But it went way beyond my expectations. There is nothing about this game that I don't like. There are things that are done extraordinarily well, there are things that are handled well, but nothing that comes to me as a minus. The art, even the art I like better than the average art of Flying Frog Productions. The quality of the components is excellent, the tiles are so thematic. It's great. It's really, I think this really is an achievement in game design, in storytelling through gaming, and in design of components. I cannot recommend Shadows of Brimstone highly enough. I've had an enormously disproportionately good time playing it. I'm sure I'll have it in the future, and I implore you to give this game a try, at least to one of the sets. It is just so much fun, and I'll be happy to know that you are having fun with this game too, that you have had even just a portion of the fun that I've had. Shadows of Brimstone, City of Ancients, the one that I tried, the Swamp version I want to try in the future. Either one I think is going to be great. If the ones that I haven't tried is even a fraction as good as this one, I think you have another great game in your hands. Shadows of Brimstone, I can't wait to see where this world goes, how the world develops. I've had a ton of fun playing this game, and I hope that you will give a try to this game too.